Yeah, I think it's official. Volume 9 is my favorite volume of Ruby, period. It's my top volume. It used to be Volume 2, but now it's Volume 9. And I think it's funny because both volumes really do not focus on the main plot. Like, Volume 2, like, its relationship with the main plot was non-existent, honestly. Well, maybe not non-existent, because they did have, like, some focus on Cinder here and there. But, like, it was kind of like a distracted puppy, like going like, there's the main plot, there's the main plot, oh, dance arc. And meanwhile, volume 9, like, while we do have some mentions of the main plot, it really is mainly character focused. And if it's not focusing on the characters, it's building up this ever after world that we will probably never see again. But despite that, every chapter after chapter 1 has been non-stop amazing, in my opinion. The world building, the characters, the humor, the animation, it's just been great after great after great after great, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm obsessed with the Curious Cat. I'm obsessed with this world and its mysteries. Like, I'm obsessed with Alex and Lewis. We haven't met them yet, but they keep hyping them up and they keep adding to this mystery, and I'm just like, I want to know more. I want to know who wrote this story. I want to know what happened to Alex and Lewis. I want to know all of these things. And because of that, like, it's going to be really, really sad when we leave and go back to Remnant. But I just hope that we can carry this really good character writing and world writing and bring it with us to Vacuo. I think I mentioned that in the last chapter. But I think that would be absolutely amazing. Like, if they brought the mystery writing and world building from the Ever After to Vacuo, Vacuo could well be the best kingdom that we've ever gone through, because it would have like history, it would have mystery, it would have interesting world building things, like maybe different machines, rules, culture, things like that. Like, Vacuo could end up being the best kingdom. But that's if they bring, like, the same energy that they have in the Ever After and put it into the world building and the writing going forward, volume 10 and beyond. So I really want to just start this breakdown going right into it and talking about Ruby and Neo. And I put these two together because for all of their differences, there are a lot of similarities between these two. Mainly their connection to Alex and how similar all three of the girls are. I mean, you have Neo, who has been a fan of this fairy tale world and has known Alex growing up, and there are a lot of similarities between their characters and, like, Neo's actions, how she's been using the Afterins and the whole world in order to get revenge on Ruby, and how she's very, like, she has been very single-minded in going after Ruby, sacrificing everybody around her. And then after that, you have Ruby, who has, started to become jaded, and I mean, like, if you remember, what do you call it? John was talking about how Alex has had treated the people of the Ever After not as people, but as just basically toys. Not even, like, I don't mean like toys like she's manipulated them, but she has very little regards for these people because she doesn't see them as people. And you got a little bit of that with Ruby, who's called the Paper Pleasers John's imaginary friends. On top of that, things like, visual things like the opening, how, Alex turned into Ruby and also turn into Neo during the openings. So, like, you have little things like that make me wonder if we are going to be getting maybe those three will actually get to meet in future chapters, and they're gonna have to work together in order to save themselves. I think it would be very interesting, especially considering we haven't actually met Alex yet. I think it'd be kind of cool if those three actually did meet. And there was something there. I don't know if there's ever going to be really a Neo redemption. She definitely did a lot, and I think part of, redeeming a character is there has to be, like, some kind of likability, or like something that at least the audience can connect to. And we sort of got that near the end, which is why I'm like, okay, maybe Neo redemption. We'll talk more about that soon, but I do wonder if, Ruby is going to want to work with Neo, or how it's going to turn out in the end. Is Neo going to, in the end, join the heroes and fight against Salem? Is she going to return to Remnant? Or is she going to, if she does return to Remnant, is she going to go her own path? Or maybe she'll never return to Remnant and she'll stay in the Ever After. Or maybe she will die at the end of the volume. It's still really up in the air. They definitely have worked hard to make Neo less of a one-dimensional character, giving her like a backstory, giving her a book, and then now we have like, you know, this whole episode that has been Neo-centric. I do wonder where they're planning on going with her. But yes, Ruby has, I mean, the chapter starts with Ruby starting to shut everybody out, which is exactly what Neo wanted Ruby alone, and that's exactly what she got. Ruby even shut Little out, somebody who has been with her since the beginning of the volume, even was with her when she met the Forger. And I definitely think that the show is recognizing what Ruby is saying and doing is wrong. But I think this is like a very complicated issue where it's like Ruby isn't the bad guy. She's yelling at everybody, but it's not like she's the bad guy or anything. She's just going through it right now, and her mentality is being clouded. And I like how in the last episode we were focused on, you know, Ruby and how she was like, okay, I wish more people would pay attention to me. Like, I have problems of my own, and I feel like I don't get a chance to really express it. This episode was focused on what those problems actually were, which was the feeling of being a failure. Like, she felt like she was leading people to their deaths. She failed Atlas. She failed Penny. And speaking of Penny, I think that whole speech that Penny gave to Ruby, or the fake Penny gave to Ruby, was not only, you know, Neo trying to break Ruby, but also how Neo was feeling. I think she also feels like a failure, but she's putting all of that guilt towards her rage towards Ruby. And I think that, you know, you have Penny, that fake Penny that's going like, do you know how it feels to be loved by somebody, but then be failed by that same person? Like, you know, like not being able to trust in them. I think that's how Neo feels towards Roman, because she did love Roman. She cared for him a lot, but at the end she wasn't there for him. She was taken out by Ruby, and next thing you know it, he died. So I think that there is that guilt that Neo has for towards Roman's death. She does blame herself, but rather than actually fully blame herself, she's just gonna be like, no, all of this hatred, all this guilt, it's supposed to be towards her, the person in red, Little Red. She's the one that killed Roman. And I like how she doesn't feel guilty about that. Like, she feels guilty about a lot of things, but she does not feel guilty about Roman's death, which, I mean, more power to her. Roman was beating her with a freaking stick in volume 3. But yeah, she's like, if you're looking for an apology, you got another thing coming. And then her arm kind of like squiggled around when she did that. That was kind of weird, but yeah, I mean, I like that. I like how she's not fully blaming herself for everything. But Neo definitely didn't like that. So what did Neo do? She tortured Ruby, and she tortured her bad. Like, we'll talk about how dark that was, and it kind of played out how I thought it was going to, minus the familiar faces. I think ever since we found out what the how Neo can like mimic the Jabberwock, even mimics their speech, I had a feeling that she would use clones to speak. I knew that she was gonna bring back Roman, of course, but I thought she was gonna bring back people from her past, not Ruby's. Of course, it makes more sense that she brings back people from Ruby's past. But like in my head, for some weird reason, I was picturing this happening next to a lake. And then like it would show Ruby getting beaten up by, you know, all these people, and then after that, meanwhile, like you have all these people speaking for Neo, and like being her mouth in a sense. But yes, all that torture, all that rage, when she actually did get what she wanted, she felt empty. And this definitely gives me like Kamen Rider O's vibes, because in a sense, this revenge has been Neo's desire. Since the end of Volume 3, she's been wanting revenge on Ruby, and, you know, for a while Cinder. She's been wanting revenge. But now that revenge has been satiated, I mean, like, that was the perfect revenge for Neo. She got to torture Ruby for a long time. Ruby was bloodied and bruised, broken to the point where she wanted to drink the tea. Like, this was perfect for Neo. This is exactly how she would want it to be played out. But in the end, she wasn't satisfied. Either because it might be because she doesn't like what she saw. Like, it didn't feel good for her. But at the same time, we know that she's like killed people. So I think it's more the case that she's lost that desire, and that's where the Kamen Rider O's comes in, because that series has always been about like desire, and they talked about the feeling of not having a desire and how that can leave you an empty husk. And that's definitely the case for Neo. I feel like she's lost her drive. She's lost everything. I mean, before wanting revenge, she had Roman. And before Roman, she had like her family, and she obviously wasn't happy with that. We saw that with the paintings, which, by the way, I do like how we're getting a little bit of background for Neo. You know, for people who haven't read the books, we can sort of piece things together through the paintings. But like, yeah, that was a very, very traumatic, very sad childhood for her. And we know she can't even go back to that because, according to the paintings, her parents are dead. So like, what does she have? She never really gave herself a chance to find herself without Roman. And it's like, it's exactly what Nora warned, or like what Nora was going through herself. Like, she spent so long with Ren that she has to find herself now. And it's like, that's only a piece of you. Don't forget about the rest. That's exactly what Neo did. Like, she doesn't know what the rest is. So now she's just an empty husk for the curious cat to take over. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested to know what Neo's future is going to be for sure. Which is great because, you know, throughout this whole series with Neo, I haven't been feeling this way. You know, volume 2 through 3, she was just this, not even an enigma, but just like this piece in the show. And it's like, it was a interesting piece, you know, a very entertaining piece, but like, I wasn't really like going like, what's Neo's background? But then she came back volume 6 through 8, and I was just like, okay, I feel like there should be more here, but there isn't. At least volume 7 and 8, I felt that way. Like, I felt like she was being pushed to the background when she should have been up front a lot more. And then volume 9, we finally got, you know, more background on Neo. We're getting some interesting story with Neo. And I'm like, thank you. I do think, though, that there should have been more background. And I'm not going to blame Volume 9. Volume 9 is the perfect child who can do no wrong. But Volume 7 and Volume 8 should have helped Volume 9 and should have prepared us for this revenge. Because I was looking at this and I was like, man, Neo really hates Ruby. And it's like, I feel like I should have felt that a lot more Volume 8 and Volume 7. I mean, like, I'm not saying that her revenge makes no sense, and it's like, if this seemingly came out of nowhere. No, this makes sense. But I feel like it would have been a lot more entertaining if this level of hatred was shown a lot more in Volume 7 and Volume 8. You know? That's all I'm saying. And having it take place in Neo's old mansion is really interesting. I wonder why she chose that location. Because was it just because, like, oh, for the fans, you know, so, you know, it's like, oh, look, it's the mansion from the book, you know, like callbacks and things like that? Or is there, like, a significance to this place? I wonder, is this the place where she killed her family? Like, is this, like, a very important place? Like, this is the place where I do revenge stuff, you know? I had revenge on my parents, killed them in here. I thought I might as well do that for you too, Ruby. Like, is that what she was thinking? I wonder. Because there was that line from Roman talking about, like, or Clone Roman talking about, like, oh yeah, she's always, like, they kind of like hinted at what Neo was like in the past. But like, I don't know, like, she could have had this anywhere. She could have created, well, I mean, they could have had Neo create a replica of the ship that Roman died on, you know, or I don't know, something weird, like, there's not a lot of significant places for Neo. But like, I wonder why they decided to choose in the end the mansion. Like, why bring that back? But this was the location for the majority of the episode, and I have to say, it looks really nice. I like the colors. It definitely fits Neo's whole thing. It was very elegant, very regal. Honestly, the mansion and the clones as well, Neo, everybody, they gave off this I don't know how to say this without sounding a little creepy, but they gave off this, I wrote it down, proper little bad girl vibes. That sounds weird, but I feel like that fits Neo's character. Like, she has this proper elegance to her, but she's like this snarkiness, this sharp edge to her that like she's been carrying since the beginning. And I feel like it's also in the clones, it's in the mansion, like it just, everything gives off that vibe. I mean, I also like how it's like it's a tea party, like something that's so innocent, so like, you know, nice in like, you know, in face value, is actually this deadly trial or this deadly death sentence. It's just like all of that gives off those creepy vibes that I really liked, and I liked how that was spread throughout the whole episode. I even like when when Roman caught Neo in that like dramatic fashion, and everybody was like, well done. Like, that was both creepy and really it fit. It fit. I loved it. But yes, talking about the clones, kind of gave like little notes for each of them. For starters, like the clones were basically like, felt like an extension of Neo. Like, part of the hype for this episode was seeing these old faces in the Maya engine again, like getting to see Roman and Pyrrha, getting to see Ozpin voice acted in a bit of a different way. Like, usually he's a lot more calm, but here he was like angry and shouty and everything like that. So it was cool seeing them in this different light. But yes, I kind of have like little notes for each of the characters. Roman, he was fantastic. It was great seeing him again. They had that suaveness that old Roman had back in the Beacon arc. And he was there for a long time too. He had a lot of lines. He had a lot of movement. All of them were great. And peak Roman is like he never left. Which is funny because he definitely had a different voice actor. He had two. Billy Kometz and Christopher Wickamp. I'm sorry if I butchered those last names. I know I did. But yes, there were two because unfortunately Billy did pass away. But Christopher took over. Both of them did really good. I couldn't really tell which one was whose, which was great. Because Christopher was able to copy Billy's voice. And yeah, both of them definitely did sound different from the original Roman. But they were able to capture that suaveness that I think everybody loved from Roman. And like I said, he was entertaining. He was carrying a lot of the episode. And yeah, they did a fantastic job. Everybody who was working on Roman did a fantastic job bringing him back. We had Pyrrha in the Maya engine. You know, a lot. I found it funny because like a lot of people were like, we wanted her back, but not like this. Seeing her again was really cool. We also got some like cool moves from her too. It was very short, but they were there. Like when she was like kicking the shit out of Ruby. Great moves, really great moves. Sad what happened, but great moves nonetheless. I give it a 10 out of 10. And after that, we had Penny with her speech that I mentioned before. I feel like that was definitely like the kicker. Because it's like, yeah, she did die twice. It's like, you couldn't save me twice. Twice you failed me. And that was just, woof, that was rough. I love how Leo and Clover were pretty much silent throughout this episode. I think they did bring back the voice actors just so like they could say, they could be a part of that unison sentence that all of them shared. But yeah, for the most part, they stayed silent because Neo doesn't know who the fuck these people are. Like, Clover didn't even have his weapon, probably because, like, nobody knows who his weapon is outside of, like, the Aesops and, like, you know, people who've worked with him. Leo is a headmaster, so it makes sense that, Neo knows, what his, weapon is. But nobody knows, you know, Leo's semblance if he has one. The Ironwood and Oz's voice acting was great. You know, it was Ironwood definitely said exactly what Ironwood would say. Oz, the voice acting was great. Oz would never say that kind of stuff to Ruby, but you know, it was cool hearing that different range from Oz's voice actor. I think with all of these clones, it is safe to say that Neo is incredibly overpowered. Like, I tweeted this, she gives off strong 6 paths of pain vibes from Naruto. she is able to use all of these different abilities. But unlike Pain, like I feel like this is even more overpowered than Pain, because Pain, he was spreading his own power on like 6 dead bodies. Neo is able to use these 7 dead people's abilities. Like, we saw Penny using maiden powers. We saw, you know, Pyrrha with her weapon and Leo with his weapon. Like, how far does her powers go? Is she able to mimic magic? I don't see why not. The Jabberwock is kind of magic, so if she's able to mimic their powers, then I don't see why she can't create, you know, the maidens and go like, you know, you want me to use, would you like these maidens to use their magic or not? Can she make Salem? Can she have Ozpin use his magic? Even though I guess she's never seen Oz use his magic, but like, has she seen Salem use her magic? Can she have Salem mimic that power? Like, how far can her power go? And I wonder if it's just constrained to the Ever After. Like, if she returns to a Remnant, is her power going to return to normal, or is she going to carry that overpoweredness with her to Remnant? If she's able to carry that power to Remnant, I would not be surprised if they bench her or like seal her in the Ever After or kill her off, because it's like, okay, this is a bit overpowered. She could just stroll up to Salem and be like, hey, take all these maidens. Bah! I mean, she just has, her power has doubled since the last time they met. That is definitely for sure. But I now want to talk about, I want to step away from that and now talk about the darkness in this episode. This episode was incredibly dark, and I feel like it wasn't unnecessarily dark. Like, you have the scene with like Ozpin turning into Oscar and then bleeding out like in front of Ruby, and it's like, oh wow, is this too much? I honestly don't think so, because this is Neo breaking Ruby and showing her her worst fears, her being the cause of somebody's death, and she knows it's fake, but still like seeing that in front of her no doubt hurt her, of course. So like, I don't think it was unnecessary. It's not like the case where like, if let's say Salem was like, if they had Hazel beating Oscar to like the inch of his life and showing it to us for like absolutely no reason and it never coming back, that I feel like would be unnecessary. But I feel like with this, it's necessary because it's Neo breaking Ruby, and we're seeing the effects that has on Ruby, and we're seeing how it makes sense for her to drink that tea at the very end. Some other stuff, battle damage. I've always been a fan of having battle damage in Ruby. I feel like battle damage helps show how difficult a fight is. Like, you see Goku without a shirt on and you're like, damn, shit's for real right now. And like, that's what I wanted for you know, for Ruby, for the show Ruby. But of course, having the semblances and having aura and the aura shield, that kind of prevents that from happening. And I feel like it's has always been a downgrade for Ruby, even all the way back to volume 1. And I feel like, let's see, the cases of battle damage has, of course, the first obvious one being Yang losing her arm to Adam. But the battle damage that I'm talking about, like the scratching and the bruises and the bleeding, I feel like the first time that we saw that was with Winter when she went up against Cinder. And I thought that was really cool. And now we see that with Ruby, and it's kind of a lot more painful because Ruby doesn't really get the chance to fight back. At least with Winter, like, she was still kind of kicking, she was still moving, you know, for the most part. But with Ruby, it's just she's getting beaten up, and it's like there's no like fighting back. And it's rough. It's rough. I mean, like, they really do not hold back with things like Ironwood freaking punching the life out of Ruby and then slamming her to the wall, or even worse, Oz just continuously beating her with his staff, like that kind of stuff. Like, the way that they had that go on for so long, like, that was painful. Like, it's like, stop, she's already dead. And that was just going on and on. Like, the physical torture, the mental torture for Ruby, I can see why they had that warning sign at the beginning, because this was definitely rough. And I understand if it's uncomfortable to watch for some people. For me, it is uncomfortable, but like, not like unwatchable uncomfortable, or they did this wrong uncomfortable. It's just like, they didn't hold back. And that's the kind of writing that I like. And I like how Ruby's getting into that. This is the darkest. I feel like this is the darkest Ruby has been since Volume 3 for sure. But it's the darkest I feel like Ruby has been. Period. And I'm happy that the writers aren't holding back and they're writing like this. You know, they're showing the darkness and they're not afraid to have their characters go through that. It shows a maturity for the writers, like, you know, side by side with the maturity with the characters. You know, like the characters are maturing and so are the writers, which is really, really great. And then after that, I have one last thing, which is the Neo swallowing the curious cat. That was pretty uncomfortable to watch too, and it's mainly because of like the little lines that they gave Neo, like the little detail there, the little lines that they gave Neo when she was swallowing the cat. It shows just how much she was struggling to swallow that whole cat, you know. It's the same thing that they did with Ruby when she was in the last I think the last episode when she was being held down by the Jabberwock, and you had those like little lines close to her eyes, and it just showed how much the tension and the fear was like twisting her face. Like that was really, really good. It's just those little tiny details that I'm glad the animators included. Really, really good. But yeah, this was a very dark episode for sure, which is another reason why I like it. Like, you know, you had the callbacks to the book, you had the return of these characters, and that's all great. But like, just the writing for what they put Ruby through, and then what they had the curious cat do at the end, I feel like that was. I don't think it's as good as the last episode. I think the last episode is probably my favorite episode of Ruby. But like shit like this is great stuff here. I'm really happy that the writers are doing stuff like this. We then have Yang and the others. I want to talk about them real quick because we do. It's the episode doesn't really focus on them. Gives a lot of the focus on Neo and Ruby, but they say stuff that I feel like is very, very important. For starters, Yang's frustrations definitely give me flashbacks to Volume 5. She says a lot of similar things to what she said about Blake, how Blake could have always talked to them. Why did she have to run away? It's similar here. It's like, why did Ruby feel like she had to hold all that stuff in? She could have talked to her. And I feel like it's both those senses, both those times, it was Yang, you know, frustrated with them, but also frustrated in herself for not catching it and for not helping. You know, she's always been that mother figure for Ruby, and to find out that your little sister is going through so much and you don't even know it, it's incredibly, it is incredibly sad for sure. And then seeing, oh God, and then yeah, having Yang see Ruby. Somebody actually connected it in a way to finding your sibling, and they're in, you know, it's like a suicide scene, and that really opened my eyes to what we were looking at. And a lot of times when I see stuff like that on Twitter, I'm like, okay, I feel like that's you adding that yourself, which is fine. But like, I'm not going to give the writers the credit because I don't know if that's really what they were trying to do. But with all this thing with suicide and things like that, you know, having it be Yang's pupil that we see, and having it be Yang that sees her sister give up on her life, that was incredibly. That, like, looking back at that scene now, it's like that means so much more now, and it's like such a small thing, and it's like if you catch it, you catch it, but when you catch it, it strengthens that scene for sure. It's very, very, it's really, really good. But yeah, I mean, that I wonder how we're gonna go from there. But the whole thing with like the team and pressuring Ruby unintentionally, it definitely brings me back to what Ruby's conversation with John in Volume 1, because Blake is like, we never asked for her to be perfect, and I feel like John remembered then. I wonder if we're gonna get a scene like that where, you know, John talks about that discussion that they had, because you even had Ruby say in that discussion that you're a leader now, John. You can't afford to, like, what was it? You can't afford to be a loser or something. Like, you can't afford to not be perfect. You can't afford to mess up. And she took that to heart. Back then, it's like, oh man, this is such a sweet scene. But like, she really took that to heart, and she's carried that with her all this time, to the point where she's just like, I wish I never did. But yeah, like it's been really good. The writing has been so good for Ruby in this volume, and I do hope that we do get a callback to that volume 1 scene, because that is perfect right there. But yes, next we got to talk about the Curious Cat, because the Curious Cat is acting like a cat and betraying us. I talked about it in the reaction, how I always had a feeling this was going to happen. One, because the Curious Cat is sus as hell, but also because the cat reminds me of that 7 Deadly Sins cat who ended up being like a monster of chaos and betraying our heroes. And that is definitely what the Curious Cat, I mean, it felt very much like that from the 7 Deadly Sins for sure. And I wonder, a part of me does feel like it was kind of like not forced into the episode, but like it kind of came like, okay, we were focusing on Neo and Ruby so much, it's like, oh, the Curious Cat is here. Oh, the Curious Cat is digging their nails into Ruby's chest. What the hell is going on? Like, it's like, it kind of felt like, oh, this kind of came out of left field. I thought we were focusing on Neo and stuff like that. So for one thing, like, we know the Curious Cat, you know, takes over Neo, and that of course has to do with Neo. So like there is that connection there, but there is a bit of that awkwardness because like the Curious Cat seemingly just came out of nowhere and started enacting their plan. Nonetheless, though, I mean, I saw that coming. I thought that the Curious Cat was working with the tree in order to get Ruby to join the Ever After, because Ruby was the most was the most vulnerable out of everybody. But it seems like the Curious Cat is striking on their own and trying to escape and go back to Remnant in order to find out why the gods abandoned them, which makes me believe that, oh, okay, so they want the relics too, no doubt. But yeah, so that's really interesting. I wonder if the Curious Cat does leave the Ever After, most likely they would probably work with Salem in order to try and get the relics so they can ask that question. It's like, after that, you can do whatever you want to Remnant. Blow it up for all I care, but I need to know. I'm curious. I'm freaking curious. It's in the name. It's in the name. But yeah, so I mean, that's an interesting thought, but I think they're going to get rid of the Curious Cat in the Ever After, you know, or at least keep them away from Remnant. Because the Curious Cat's powers in Remnant, oh boy, that would not be good. But yeah, so I mean, we know that the Curious Cat has been trying to push Ruby. If you remember in chapter 4, like they kept like nudging her with like the relics and Salem. So like they have been definitely trying to break her. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they tried to do that with Alex too, because they both ended, like Alex and Ruby ended up in the herbalist's tent or herbalist house, you know, getting high, retreating into themselves more and more because of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is what they were trying to do with Alex, and it just makes me wonder what happened to Alex and Lewis. Like, this mystery has been building up for so long. It feels like the freaking who's the author question from Gravity Falls. Like, honestly, who is the author? Because we still don't even know who left. Was it Alex or Lewis? So it's like, who wrote the story? Who escaped? Who betrayed who? What's going on, you know? Did the Curious Cat even get a chance to betray Alex and Lewis? Like, I wonder, I mean, like, God, I want to know what happened so bad. Hopefully we get those answers starting tomorrow. I mean, starting next episode. But yes, the Curious Cat takes over Neo. It is a great scene. I love the transformation. I love the smile. Honestly, the Curious Cat's like smile, creepy smile, all throughout, like ever since they arrived in the episode, has been really, really good. But then the smile on Neo as well, like that was really good. If you guys see the artwork for this Curious Cat Neo hybrid, oh my God, I love that kind of stuff. Like this art, these like art pieces has been so good, and I'm just like, yes, this craziness is creating, like, you know, crazy fan art, like from the fans, and it's like, yes, this kind of writing is great. Like, I really hope, even though we will return to Remnant, I hope this kind of writing doesn't leave us, you know? Like, I love this out-of-pocket nonsense, and I hope we get more of it. The ending, we have some questions that have been kind of left for us. For started, like we talk about the tree again, and like the curious cat was like, "Oh, it's not a place you go; it's a place you know," and it makes me wonder, like, is it like inside your heart? Because like when they say like a place you know, I immediately think like, okay, maybe like a past memory or something like that. And there was that little line from one of the books where Sun was like, where we find out that Sun got his semblance after dreaming about like a tree. So it's like, is this tree connected to everybody, even people on Remnant? And like, if so, like, do they have to like unlock that memory in order to reach the tree? Like, how does this work, you know? And then another thing was like the character placement. So we had the whole thing with Neo when she gave the drink to Ruby. You know, Roman was there, and then when the other girls, when they and Junip and John arrived, Roman was gone, and Neo was like slightly farther away from Ruby. And then after that, after everything that happened with Ruby, and she like went into the sunken place, Neo was sitting down. And I'm just like, okay, I'm kind of trying to figure out what the hell is going on here. When did Neo sit down? Where did Roman go? Where did all the clones go? Some people are like, was any of that actually real? Like, how? I mean, that's not really how Neo's powers work. It's not like she's putting you under a hallucination. She's creating like physical illusions. So I don't really know if this was because maybe the animators and everybody forgot to add her sitting down in the chair, because I feel like they should have, if that's the case, because it's kind of left us all confused. Or is it like there actually is a reason for that? I don't know. There are a lot of questions in this episode. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. But that's basically my discussion of this episode. Really, really good. Really, really good for the characters. Really, just how far they were able to push this has been really, really impressive for sure. I don't think every episode needs to be as dark as this. But if they are, when they do dip into the darkness, I'm glad that they're not afraid to dip into the darkness, you know? Just kind of jump right in, you know? But yeah, this was a really good episode for sure. We have 2 left. Hopefully we get some good answers. Hopefully they stick that landing. Yeah, I mean, tell me what you guys thought about this episode down below. I mean, I'm interested because, I mean, I've talked my ear off. And if you guys have watched this whole thing, then I first of all, I thank you. And I mean, I'm very interested to know what you guys thought. Did you guys think this was as good as I did? Are you guys excited for the next 2 episodes? Are you scared? What are you guys hoping for? Like, what mysteries are you hoping get solved next week or this coming episode? All those questions, please tell me it down in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you guys next time. Until then,